Great. Well, hi everyone. My name's Sarah Healy, and I'm pretty excited to be joining you from the stolen lands of the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, otherwise known as St Kilda. And I live in a little enclave here, which is home to an abundance of magpies, which warble most beautifully and seem to have formed a largely non-violent relationship with the human residents, which is quite fortunate. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of not only this land of warbling magpies, but all the lands we gather from today, and give my respect to elders past, present, and emerging. And thank you for writing your own acknowledgements on the slide, because I think it's very much a relational practice acknowledgement of country and acknowledging this digital space that we come into from all sorts of places around Australia and sometimes internationally. Now, so today's seminar, which Amanda and I have called Collaborating with AI in Speculative Inquiry, is brought to you by myself, an absent colleague, Anna Maria Neig, who's actually in the Charles University in Prague, and my other wonderful colleague, Amanda Belton, who's been a really big part of my research life at the Graduate School of Education through SCIP, which is now, I think, amalgamated with MDAP. So, Amanda, did you want to say a quick hello?
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'd like to, along with Sarah, invite you into a speculative space where we're going to do a bit of time travel, a bit of speculating, a bit of making, and hearing about Sarah's collaboration with AI.
So we've organised today's session into 3 parts, and we've built in little spots for discussion along the way. So we won't hold you sitting or having content thrown at you for too long in any one bite. Part 1 is a more formal 15-minute presentation where I'm going to tell you the story of how I came to understand AI-based social listening tools more as collaborator, replete with flaws, and less as a brute instrument to reach predetermined research goals. Part 2 is where Amanda and I fold the idea of speculation and, using some speculative fiction produced for a co-writing project we did last year, we're going to show how speculative thinking makes it possible to bring critical inquiry and data analytics into the same research space. And then part 3, which I know is what you're all here for, is our kind of bringing everything together through thinking and doing, and that's going to be facilitated by Amanda in a mini making session. So I hope you really enjoy this. Yeah, welcome. So this first bit of work that I'm presenting comes out of an ongoing research collaboration with Dr. Anna Maria Neig, who's a new media scholar in Charles University in Prague, which I just mentioned. So the project falls under the auspices of EU ethics, and while it's primarily cited on social media, it's geopolitically located in Hungary during the school closures of 2020. And that was at a time when homes really became this odd mix of domestic life, learning, and, when possible, work. So as schools shifted into children's and teachers' ordinary domestic spaces via networked digital technologies, boundaries between home and school became increasingly blurred. Everyday interactions of learners, teachers, and parents gained this unexpected mobility and visibility through networked digital technologies, moving in and between settings and the public domain in previously quite unimagined ways. So effectively charged social media exchanges associated with learning from home provided these unique insights into children's changing use of digital technologies and indeed the place of digital technologies in education more generally. The broader research project or research collaboration, which provides the setting for the smaller piece that I'm presenting today, seeks to grasp these insights by studying how dispositions of children, teachers, parents, and schools form and function to prime individual responses to everyday digital encounters in less distinct educational settings, just like the home. Specifically, my colleague Anna Maria and I are interested in how children's encounters with digital technologies were shaped in and through everyday encounters during the first year of the pandemic in Hungary, and with what effects. So the smaller slice of this large project, which is the use of social listening as method, has been framed as an onto methodological inquiry. And as you can see on the slide here, this is guided by the question, how can Senti1, an AI-based social listening tool, help to explore sentiment toward remote learning during COVID-19 related school closures, as conveyed on Hungarian social media? So I'm anticipating that most of you probably know what Senti1 is or social listening is, but for those that are still wondering, it's basically an AI-based social listening tool that's created primarily for commercial purposes. It uses algorithms to scrape social media for data, and it claims to do sentiment analysis, but as I'll go into, this claim is maybe not a strong claim. But one of its strengths is that it affords macro and micro analysis. And I've just popped the website here just in case there's anyone that wanted to take a note of that. So we jumped into this project primarily because we had access to this amazing social listening tool, and I had this real fascination with how Senti1 could have potential for mapping affect and its alleged ability for doing sentiment analysis. However, what Senti1 said it could do was quite a lot better than the reality of what we found, especially in a social research context. So it didn't do what it was promised. Not only did commercial understandings of sentiment not match our conceptual understandings of affect and emotion, but a closer look at the way it coded and sorted data showed all sorts of issues. It meant we had to rethink how we were working with Senti1 and seek workarounds. So Anna and I started thinking of this as going off-piste. And as we did this, we began to position Senti1 more as a collaborator in a more than human research team and less as a tool or instrument for us to use. And this was much more successful for us. So it was at this point that our onto methodological inquiry came into reality. The unforeseen challenges of working with Senti1 prompted us to think deeply about the politics of social listening tools and consider how we might proceed in a more ethical and affirming direction. The concept that came to the fore was the feminist materialist philosophy of becoming with. As Haraway has said, we become with each other or not at all. And this aligns with Braidotti, who talks about it as an imperative to develop different ways of caring, a more transversal relational ethics that encompasses the non-humans. And this includes the artificial intelligences that we are increasingly sharing our lives and knowledge making with. So another guiding concept that's really prominent in our inquiry is that of relational effect. I'm not going to do a deep dive into this. That could be a whole a whole set of seminars in itself, but you do kind of need to have a bit of an understanding when deviating from the more commonly understood usage of the word in that psychological sense, and taking affect as it's been taken up in philosophy and affect theory and a lot of interdisciplinary research. So basically, the way that we frame affect is that affects arise in the relations between people, things, ideas, feelings, digital artifacts, AI, pets, and more. Rendered via Spinozist philosophy, affect is transpersonal. It can occur at a bodily level, but is distinct from emotion. Affect can be understood to capacitate, and that's in the sense of potentia, or incapacitate, and this is referred to as potesta, and is often talked about in terms of capacities and micropolitics. In our inquiry, positioning sentiment as a type of relational affect that is uncoupled from humans helps us to rethink and redo commercial sentiment analysis of Senti-1 in more affirming ways. So that's the kind of necessary heavy theoretical thinking around this work. But now I'm going to actually quickly walk you through a bit of the working method. These images are just screenshots from our Miro board, which is the digital site we use to collaborate with. As I was saying before, the automated algorithms that Senti-1 made available to us to begin with didn't produce the results that matched our own understandings of affect or correspond with our framing of affect as relational. To further complicate matters, we're working in Hungarian. I don't speak Hungarian. Translating to English, which is necessary because these publications that come out of this sort of research is expected to be published in English. And there is a surprising number of things that get quite lost in these translations. For example, it is not common in Hungarian to think about teaching and learning as separate processes, whereas in Australia, we tend to separate the two quite systematically. So we took our initial search, which started with keywords related to online teaching, and scanned the results for affectively charged language, making a note of words in the social media posts used to express feelings towards learning from home and commonly used phrases to describe digital practices, which you can kind of see on the side, right on the side of that screenshot around digital competencies. So, like a broad scoping, we could pick up the language and then extract, I guess, or pick out the terms that we could visually see were coming up that we could work with. We created a search query with Hungarian keywords related to remote learning and paired these with the second set of keywords that indicate the presence of bodily affects, which are expressed as emotions. So these are words like fury and blessing, which again in English would be quite uncommon, but in the Hungarian were quite common, which is interesting in itself. It was by doing this work that we were able to create our own algorithms in conjunction with Senti-1. So that was kind of like this back-end process that we used to recreate Senti-1 to do the sentiment analysis we were looking for. We made a timeline of media events as well. This is just another little snapshot. And government announcements related to the pandemic over 2020. So we could get like a really good grasp of what are these things happening in time. And so we could start to put what the search results that were coming back through Senti-1 into some kind of context. And now I have here a selection of data events. Now, I know you very astute data folk will be panicking at these lovely smooth widgets, saying that's a problem. Now, the widgets actually come from more complex data, but SentiOne do self-generate these little widgets to give you visual representations of what's happening, which obviously is a nice way of communicating complex data, but it is lacking the the deviances that maybe you'd be looking for to verify, I guess, that this is actually real data. Anyway, so we in these widgets that we're showing here, what they are just snapshots of the peaks and troughs that we identified in the social media mentions, and how we mapped these onto timelines of pandemic-related government announcements. It allowed us to identify 4 key timeframes and 4 correlating media events that contributed to particular peaks, which were of interest to us. Each media event involved an online publication or announcement and a cascade of social media exchanges. The events were in order. Number 1, an article where the teacher gets up and you can see his belly, the title. Published early March, an article where angry parents complain about the technological platforms used by schools, resulting in the decree, "This online teaching equals 0." The third one, an article about how teachers survived remote learning by co-opting domestic objects such as a kneading board with paint. And then the fourth one, a Facebook video where the Hungarian Prime Minister announces free internet for a month for those learning online. And that was in November. So these 4 events kind of became the focus of our data scraping. I'm really sorry, the neighbours have got the leaf blower out. So just shout if we need to take a little break.
It's fine. It's very not. It's very muffled and soft.
I'm so sorry about that. So I'm just going to check the windows are closed. I'm so sorry. The unexpected joys of presenting from home. So this slide's the close-up event of the event 1, which is the article, the teacher gets up and you can see his belly. And what you can see here is actually mentions in time and a little bit of data around that, like the different reactions, the comments, the shares, and things like that. When we actually pull this data up, we can get deeper and deeper and more fine-grained into it, to the point where you can actually trace through every single comment and reaction to it. So this is the media article that precipitated all the comments and social media exchanges, and then also links out to other media and things like that. So for analysis, we're adopting a 2-step process to enable us to map the digital artifacts that are gathered, generated, scraped. Step 1 involves the fine-grained analysis of linguistic and non-linguistic reactions, such as the Facebook likes, emojis and GIFs that they put in the comments, and the hyperlinks shared to trace trajectories of ideas across the web. And step 2 involves a second layer of analysis where the relations between the data event and the broader social structures are mapped using our timeline of media events to guide us. We're looking for traces or what I think of hauntings in the data, attending to ordinary affects of everyday life and lockdown, in order to map how the scientific, or the specific, sorry, not scientific, immaterial practices of writing articles, posting, commenting, or reacting onto the topic of remote learning materializes broader affective dispositions towards learning with and through digital technologies. So that kind of brings us to the end of this little bit. I wanted to leave you with some of the questions I'm currently contemplating as Anna Maria and I continue this work, and also as I begin the task of adapting the study for the Australian context, hopefully in collaboration with some MDAP folk for the postdoctoral work that I'm about to start in April. And yeah, so now if we can open up to 5 minutes of discussion, pop a few questions into chat if you prefer to, you know, not be vocal or visible, or shout, or just put your hand up.
Marlena's really interested in hauntology, the hauntings. If you could tell us a bit about that link.
Yes, I can. So Lisa Blackman, so many of you, I believe, have been to the Small Data is Beautiful symposium. Lisa Blackman was the keynote there, and I loved her talk so much that I went out and bought her Haunted Data book straight afterwards. What I might do. And so the idea around haunted data really kind of comes out of or attaches a little bit to Lisa Blackman's work, but also that tracing of affect and how affect acts as sometimes as a contagion and sometimes as a force, and sometimes how it kind of gets left in data trails and then transforms into different things or into new trajectories. Yeah, so that's a new direction that I'm going in.
And Noel has his hand raised.
Noel.
Yeah, 2 questions. One is, I mean, you've chosen a specific company with their particular package around sentiment analysis, but there's at least, you know, probably 10 others that you could use. Some will be similar, etc. Did you look at exploring differences between each of those overall to see how much variation there is across it? And the second is, have you thought about not translating to English because of the issues? And I know that language models make a big difference to the actual precision that translation occurs. Are there not companies based in Hungary that have got their own sentiment analysis that you can then do, so you get more of a keeping the nuances of the language maintained as well, while getting that high level sentiment analysis across the actual data set, which may have been a bit more informative.
So
there's a bit to unpack.
Yeah, so, well, actually, those 2 questions are quite closely connected. Firstly, we're using Senti1 because we already had the license for it. Anna Maria had a research project running in Hungarian with a research team. And they finished early. And then she was basically donated the use of Senti1 for, you know, the stretch of the project that we've done. So again, research costs. So it was a free social listening tool rather than paying a couple of $1,000s for us to experiment and play with it. So yeah, a little bit opportunistic there, but her research team, which is based in Hungary and uses Hungarian as their language and in a Hungarian context, but also in the Czech Republic as well, and across a couple of European states, had already decided, kind of gone through that process themselves and had selected Senti1 for a variety of reasons to do that work. So I guess we were leveraging off the back of that work that her team had already done, and then kind of taking it up from there.
And Richard, you've posted a few interesting links.
Lots of potential in automated sentiment analysis, especially across large bodies of digital text.
Yeah, hi there. My PhD was looking at why people buy new technology, and when we kind of dug down and trying to expose what's inside innovation, we got to value, and then inside value was like emotion. So then sentiment analysis, you know, is a tool to try and uncover and understand emotions that customers are feeling. So I think a lot of these, there's a whole bunch of businesses now around tracking sentiment against brands, so that say for instance ARDC, if we want to know what our customers are saying about us in social media, then if we can trace that over time and see if people are talking about us positively and if they're talking about us negatively, and we try and understand what that's about, and has it been triggered by an event, and you know, I think there's a lot of potential, including industrial type potential for businesses to understand their customers better through these kind of, particularly automated, where the text is very large. And I think there are quite a few jobs where brands are communicating with their customers online. Think of someone like MDM, who's got millions of customers, and they're responding to where they see people tweeting about them. But then to have a tool that they can track and identify customers who are having strong emotions about the services, that I think this is that the space has a lot of potential commercial benefits. So research in this area is quite important.
Yeah, it was really interesting that we found, because what we were doing is taking a tool that had been developed exactly for the functions that you're describing. But what we also found was that that didn't translate directly back into a social research context. So there were, like, the sentiment analysis for our project was unusable in the way that it was, in the automated way that it came back, which is what then prompted us to do the workarounds, which actually have worked really well for us. But it does, I guess, shed light back on the commercial tool, because it shows that if it doesn't translate well across contexts, then perhaps it's not always translating well across all commercial contexts. So I guess there's probably some learnings from taking it away and then looking at the problems that we had to begin with.
I feel like these tools are at a fairly early stage of their life cycle, and we could be decades away from having a really good, deep understanding where they have, they take context into account.
And wouldn't that be amazing if they could take those contexts into account? But at the moment, I guess, and that's where this idea of more starting to come at this, thinking about AI as just a research collaborator. It's bringing certain strengths to your research team. It can't do everything. There's some things it will do better in certain scenarios than others. It will probably have better relationships with some people than other people. Yeah, so, and I guess what we found was incredibly generative was when we really shifted our thinking around that it enabled us to actually see the possibilities rather than get bogged down in the limitations. Biases based on the training as well. Yeah, it's so many biases. And then we've seen that too, haven't we, in a lot of the early AI training where only dominant populations, like the face recognition and things like that, it didn't pick up all races and all populations. Any other questions, burning questions? We will have the opportunity to talk further. Well, in that case, what we might do is take this as the opportunity to move on to the next part of the seminar. I have a nifty slide to share again. Hypnotic chef running in the background. Don't go to sleep, will you? So we see the purpose of speculation and this opening of, possibility thinking in this kind of work is to bring about critical inquiry and data analytics in the same research space. So it's not an either or anymore. It's about bringing these two things together. And one of the ways this happens is by opening up a space of indeterminacy in the research process, a space where we, the human researchers, do actually have to relinquish some control. It is in this space that the what if questions can be explored and a future orientated perspective can be taken up. Now, this is not just pie in the sky thinking. It's actually important because speculating on the what ifs with and through data work can help anticipate what lies ahead and then guide us to take action that mitigates, responds, and adapts to what's happening to these future possibilities. So one way Amanda and I have been doing this is by diffracting our thinking through speculative research stories. So I'm going to hand over to Amanda now, and she's going to take it from here.
So we're talking quite a bit about diffraction and drawing on Karen Barrett that Sarah cited earlier. She was a physicist, if you don't know. And so this idea that through diffraction, we can see things differently and we can see multiple possibilities. And speculation was a way to think about that, of multiple futures. And Dunn and Raby, and you'll see the references at the end, talk about the methodological playground of speculation. And this is our bit of time traveling, our chance to be Gallifreyan, even with only one heart, and travel from the past to the present to the future. And in our speculation, as we looked at the research, one thing that came out was well-being and the importance of well-being, which may not be a surprise during a pandemic, but it was so strong. And so with our Barrattian diffractive approach, we wondered about it. We speculated about the tensions that we see in higher education now. What if they go forward? What if there's a future where those tensions escalate until there's a revolution, a student revolution? Students occupy the University of Melbourne's compute facilities and start mining Bitcoins and fund the revolution. The speculation then took us through to 2041. When we were thinking about all these tensions that the research shows us are in higher education, the trends for datification, the use of AI in learning, what might that look like in 2041? And I'm just going to read part of the speculation. Sandy flicked on the Visicom to start recording this week's class, ready for the student soccer bots, models from 38-9 to 40-2. Later in the day, the bots gather and turn their processors towards Sandy's face, processing Sandy's questions, facial expression, and body signals into their neural nets as Sandy looks around the class cell with satisfaction. The bots start their master of teaching primed with subject matter and human signal reading, but guiding the learning of young humans demands an expansion of the bots' empathy modules and creativity incubation skills to facilitate quality learning, while supporting student health and well-being. Sandy is passionate about lifting standards of education and care through their research at the Virtual Research Cooperative, or VERC. Much of the teacher soccer bot's role these days is concerned with placemaking and connecting to country. It's shown to improve student wellbeing outcomes in schools and across our planetary home, and has begun to reverse the damage inflicted by previous generations. So many students have been displaced again and again in their short lives. They need support to anchor their knowledges and knowing in the first people's knowledge of place and place stories. Sandy is guiding these bots to create safe, knowledge-rich classrooms for students to progress through the basics of reading, coding, drawing, and storytelling that will take them through the long journey all humans must take. And I think this is where this framing in the realm of more than human actors with their own agency, their own material. One of the things I loved about this, working with Sarah on this, was thinking about the ethics of the AI through that lens. You know, what if AI is not anthropomorphized, but is an unreliable collaborator?
And it was quite an amazing collaboration, actually. The codetta that Amanda just performed, thank you, Amanda, it was beautiful, came out of a writing collaboration that involved a number of co-authors from the university, Sonia Arndt, Thomas Cochrane, and David Gurr, all from MGSC. And the story was written during lockdown for a book chapter in a book that asked us to speculate on the future of higher education. At the time, I don't think we really appreciated the power of speculative fiction to spark change in our own programs of research. It wasn't until much later that it dawned on me that it had enabled me to better understand AI as an active participant in both the research process and in the social lives of data it scraped from the internet. And in particular, it made me realize that much of what I initially saw as shortcomings of CENTI-1 could equally be framed as shortcomings of that instrumentalist practice that I was kind of unconsciously forcing on this relationship with AI. And so making the ethical dimensions of AI related research really real to me in this actual practice-based context. But you had a different experience, didn't you? It influenced your practice quite differently, Amanda?
Yeah, so for me, working with data visualization and information design, it shifted how I worked with technology. So now I take a more conversational approach, you know, trying to understand what Unity wants to do, or PowerPoint, and what I want it to do. And this gap in between, you know, we're talking a lot about these spaces in the in-between. The gap in between is telling me something about how that technology works and how I want to work. And so out of this speculation, this speculative research, and this gaining an understanding of this idea of more than human, that's not just about anthropomorphizing, you know, it was something that gave me an understanding that I didn't have before, and it did shift how I work with technology.
So that kind of brings it, well, do you have any questions at this point?
So no questions. What I might do is we'll jump into some making. What do you reckon?
I think so. And people can kind of process through doing. Do a little bit of speculative making, Amanda.
Yes, so I've posted the link to the pulp-o-mizer and encourage you to jump in and have a play. And I'm just going to share it on my screen. And so this is a tool a researcher's made to make these science fiction pulp style posters. And it gives us a chance to think about for example, the ethics of AI. What if our fears get realized? What if our hopes are realized? What does that look like when you encapsulate it, when you encode your research? And, you know, coming from an action research perspective, this making of your research of a poster is the research. You know, as you're making it, you're teasing out the things that you want to jump forward in time and see how they've ended up a possible future. So jump in. I've been looking at some research from Troy Heffernan on student engagement surveys. And so I'm going to make a poster, and you'll see that the tool here, it works reasonably well if you're following a straight line. So I'm just, if you'd like to have a play, have a go. This tool will let you play a little with the layout, and also have a choice of backgrounds that might illustrate what you want to communicate.
So Amanda, when you pull up, so you click on the link in the chat, and then that takes you to the pulp-o-mizer. And then in the text area 1, write your own text. You can kind of put your headline, yeah?
Yeah, yep.
And then do you just press enter?
Well, you actually need to just click outside that text space for it to update.
Ah, okay.
And you can see the text that they've got there, you can update or change. And again,
oh, that's so cool.
when you click outside that text, you can see how it updates.
And then if it's not quite right, you can play in the text area. Oh, I see. Okay.
And you can even change, you know, where it's located. You can change the text size. I highly recommend use of all caps and exclamation marks after academic writing. It kind of feels wrong, but kind of freeing.
And it really does change your thinking about, especially when you have to go to the different text areas.
Yeah, so you can change the image. There's these little accordion features, so you can choose your background. And you can see I'm just changing the background behind the Hellboy dude. And I can change the Hellboy dude to a few different images. So you can change your images, your foreground and your background in the tool.
If you're in need of a creative prompt, there's get random titles.
once you're happy with how your poster looks, you can save it. And it downloads. If you'd like to share what you've done, we'd love to see you on Twitter or email to Sarah or I. And I'll just stop sharing my screen now, and Sarah can pop up our email addresses.
Yeah, this is really cool. Please do share it.
And I think especially, knowing some of the names around the table here, your research, I think could be really interesting done as a schlock pulp sci-fi poster. And I'm really curious to see what kind of tensions you want to play with and stretch to an extreme.
I'm going to tweet it, hashtags AI speculation, and then we can see each other's work that way.
And if anyone wants to jump in and maybe chat about what they're playing with.
What does the perimeters of the tool make you kind of have to change about your practice? And then in having to adapt to the perimeters of the tool, how did that make things different again in terms of your thinking? And yeah, and those kind of things, what are the interrelationships between making this magazine cover and the way that you're thinking about your research?
And Priyanka, you've tweeted?
I'm just about to. I'm composing a tweet.
Very exciting. Oh, Jess. I'll just I might share my screen and jump in and show Twitter if that's okay, Sarah.
Yes.
Let's so Jess, the cyborg woman is all of us. That is beautiful.
Could you quickly, do you want to speak to this briefly, Jess? Tell us.
Yeah, no worries. No, I really love the tool. It's very fun. I'll probably be playing with that for a while. No, I'm actually just sort of writing about cyborg relations at the moment in my PhD and thinking through how the cyborg today has a certain sort of materiality and form. And then I thought this kind of retro pulp fiction poster was an amazing way to encapsulate that. So yeah, I kind of want that in my chapter now. Maybe I'll think of ways that perhaps I can do that. Cover image. Thanks.
Yes. And I missed a lot of what Amanda was saying, because I got thrown off the internet, frozen and thrown off, and then back on. But Amanda was going to speak about those, the way speculation, and now that we've gone retro, allows for that time travel dimension, and traveling forward and traveling back, and having a more fluid or folded concept of time.
Yeah, I talked about being a Time Lord and relished the chance to bring in all my Gallifreyan knowledge, which isn't that big. But Richard, you've got Invasion of the Cute and Cuddly Pokemon.
Yeah, juxtaposing what my 10-year-old's obsessed with the strange and weird and wonderful of science fiction.
And I find Pokemon fascinating. You know, for me, it's given me a new understanding of augmented reality and how it can take place. And it is interesting how they are cute and cuddly. Whereas the techno-futurist view of science fiction, you know, these scary things.
even the color palette is saying warning. You imagine, you would have seen the colors of Pokemon are very, not about childlike, but very rainbow, I guess. Bright, bold, high intensity colors.
Which in nature sometimes is a warning as well, isn't it?
Yeah, the colourful frogs.
Don't eat me.
With that, we might keep an eye on Twitter and email if anyone is happy to share. Oh, Priyanka, I haven't seen yours yet.
Should pop up. I've added the hashtag and your handles and everything. Hang on, I'll double check.
No, I'm sure it'll be me, I'm sure.
I'm sure. I'm just checking the spelling. That's correct. The hashtag should be under the hashtag.
I blame the algorithm.
There's sometimes a lag in Twitter, not always, but sometimes.
Oh, we'll have to keep an eye out on Twitter. But I didn't want to miss the chance to show the references slide. Sure, if you don't mind sharing. And today's part of the MDAP Seminar series. And so we have another seminar coming up in a month.
So references here, always happy to share these things. If you want something, just email us. And thank you,
yes,
everybody.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's always a joy to be working with you.
Yes, thank you, Amanda. It's always much more fun presenting in twos. It's better, and hopefully this has prompted some thinking around some of those key themes and some reflection, and some you've been able to think a little more deeply through the mini making session.
And thank you, Andrew and Noel, for having us in the MDAP seminar series. And the next seminar is on research partnerships and building communities, a panel discussion.
Thanks, Amanda, and thank you, Sarah. Yeah, I'm about to post my poster as well on Twitter. So we're really excited to have our next panel event in person. Shock horror, and we all keep our fingers crossed that we'll go ahead as planned. On the 5th of April, we'll serve a light lunch. Back to the good old days, 2019 and before. So we'll hope to see many of you there in person on the 5th of April in the Melbourne Connect launch pad on the super floor there. So make sure you get along to that. And thank you so much again for everyone contributing to the session. Really interactive presentation, and we'll see everyone soon. Just going to stop the recording.